The New York Times Close Up. Saturday nights at 10 and Sunday mornings at 10. Only on Time Warner Cable News, New York 1.
We are back inside City Hall. My first guest tonight has spent much of his career battling with city government on behalf of his clients, many of whom have been low-income New Yorkers. But now he's part of the City Hall establishment, having been appointed by Mayor de Blasio to lead our city's Human Resources Administration, which handles social service programs, including welfare, food stamps, and support for patients with HIV and AIDS. Here now to talk about his new role as the city's Human Resources Commissioner, Stephen Banks. Good to see you. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk to you about your testimony before the City Council, because there was some stuff in there that I found absolutely fascinating. It's, I guess, partly commentary on the prior administration, but we want to know what the new direction is going to be. One of the striking things that you said is that every month there are about 17,000 to 19,000 cases closed by HRA, and a similar number that reopen. So even though the economy's been going up and down, and mostly down in recent years, it looks like the caseload has stayed the same. Were they trying, was the prior administration trying to keep the numbers flat, do you think?
Look, I can't comment on motivations, but in terms of evaluating what policies we should have and what reforms are needed, we wanted to look at what the data shows. And the data shows that there's an unduplicated number of people on assistance in any given year, about 500 to 600,000, 500,000 receiving ongoing assistance, and 600,000 when you include people who got maybe one-shot assistance to help with an eviction. But yet, if you look at it on a monthly basis, it's only 350,000, and the only explanation is the on and off churning of people who are made to reapply and come back all the time. But there's a more profound effect aside from the human cost. We also found that 1 out of every 10 people who had either a case closing or a sanction of some sort ended up on an application for shelter. And so the implications here is the link between these policies and homelessness. And when we looked at the other side, we found that 23% of the people who were applying for shelter had had a case closing or a sanction of some sort. And in fact, about 2/3 of the people applying for shelter in the city had some sort of involvement with HRA. And nearly 40% of the people who had a prior involvement with HRA had a case closing or a sanction at some point before applying for shelter.
So let's pick that apart. I mean, what does that say to you? Does that say that there are holes in the safety net, or does that say that the city, whether inadvertently or for some other reason, is causing homelessness where it's supposed to be preventing it?
It certainly shows us there's a link between these policies of constant closing of cases and constant sanctioning of individuals and the people that are seeking shelter. And the challenge for us is to identify the policies that are linked with this problem, that are associated with this problem, so that we can stop it from happening. On the one hand, there's the human cost, but there's also now potentially $10 million in penalties for the city for unnecessary fair hearings that are resulting from all of this.
Pursuant to what? Is that a federal
based upon a
rule?
new state law, the city wins about 10% of the hearings that it does, and it's a reaction, frankly, at the state level to this unnecessary numbers of hearings which are driving up costs, and now the city is potentially liable for a penalty. But it's an important reminder that this policy is not working. If you look at also the employment numbers, we're spending about $200 million on various employment programs, and 25% of the people coming back within a year. We need better results for people. We need programs that work, and that's what we're in the process of doing over the past 8 weeks since I started as the Human Resources Commissioner. Under the mayor and the first deputy mayor and Deputy Mayor Barras-Pioli's guidance, we've been evaluating every policy to see, is it helping people get on with their lives? The programs we have should be a ladder out of poverty, and to some extent, the fact that 1 out of 10 people whose cases are closed or sanctioned end up on shelter applications, it's a pretty clear indication that the programs aren't working. Or similarly, if 1 out of every 4 people who are reported to having gotten some type of employment and moved off the HRA caseload are then coming back within 12 months, that program's not working either.
I mean, could on the employment question, could it be something as simple as the fact that tracking for placement, when we're talking about job placement, usually they just want to check in after like 90 days, and if they've held the job for 90 days, then that's considered a success.
Right, but we looked at what happened over the course of 12 months, because ultimately our programs have to be successful in combating poverty, in getting people out of the situation which they need our assistance. And so it's not a successful approach if 1 out of 4 people are coming back within a year.
Right.
And one of the underlying reasons for that is the one-size-fits-all approach to employment programs of the past. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to take a much more nuanced approach. The people who can work, we should link them to employment. The people who need other kinds of help, we have to give them that other kinds of help so that they can move on and get off of the caseload. And so that's one of the reasons why we changed our position and supported the recent enactment of the state law to enable our clients to have 4 years of college. They have to work 20 hours still in different kinds of programs like work study and other kinds of paid employment. They have to maintain a good average, but the new law enables us to give our clients an opportunity to get an education.
Oh, no, that's interesting. You just mentioned something that I had not heard. Your critics, of course, say that employment and training and 4-year college counting as work for purposes of still receiving benefits is either not proven or is proven to not work, is what the critics say.
Well, but every study has shown that people have a far greater chance of getting paid employment that gets them out of poverty if they actually get 4 years worth of education. Mm-hmm. And what the state law does is now give us an option for those people who are able to go to college. It still requires the same sorts of work requirements. Mm-hmm. It still requires you to do well in school, but it gives you the option to go to 4 years of college. We're also looking at the problems with high school equivalency, because there's a lot of data that shows that high school equivalency enables people to get better paying jobs than those who don't have high school equivalency. Mm-hmm. And there are other people who don't need the kinds of services in the days past. My first day on the job, I was in all 5 boroughs. I went to meet with the frontline staff to speak with them. One of the centers in Brooklyn, a woman came in. She had been working for many years in a white-collar setting. She had gotten unemployment benefits. In the infinite wisdom of the federal government, those benefits were allowed to run out, and she was coming to us for help, and we were sending her to resume writing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's not needed. Mm-hmm. She needs a rapid attachment back to the workforce, and that's what we're going to be doing. As I said in the testimony before the City Council, we have to file a biennial employment plan, and we're going to be putting our plan together and putting it out for comment next month.
Is it fair to say, though, maybe one size doesn't fit all, but the notion of trying to sort of, personally tailor a plan for hundreds of thousands of people every year is going to tax even the most well-run agency, right?
Well, we have to be more nuanced in our approach. It's clear that the one-size-fits-all policy hasn't been working. That's how you get the 1 out of 4 people returning within a year. Mm-hmm. But there's certainly a happy medium between having 350,000 different individual programs and having one program that has been shown by the data that the agency has not to work.
Well, what about the underlying assumption, which is that there are jobs out there? I mean, I hear this from people all the time. It's like, yeah, you can train me all you want, but if we're in a recession, if the jobs aren't here, what good is the training?
Well, I think that's the great benefit of being the HRA commissioner in a de Blasio administration. The mayor has formed, as you know, a task force on jobs for New Yorkers, and that's aimed at looking at enhancing our job development in the city. And HRA is at the table and part of that process under the mayor's leadership. And we believe that with the effort that's going to be led directly by the mayor, that we're going to have greater opportunities, greater economic opportunities for our clients to get out of poverty.
Okay, I've got more to talk about with you in just a minute, so stay put. We're going to take a short break, then we'll be back with Commissioner Steve Banks. We are back inside City Hall speaking with the city's Human Resources Commissioner, Stephen Banks. And I wanted to read you a quote from one of your critics and ask you how this all works. I mean, you've talked about in your testimony and a little bit here tonight about sort of changing some of the things that lead to punitive sanctions or cases being closed and sort of trying to work with people in a different kind of a way. This, of course, has brought some reaction. So Heather McDonald, who is known to you, a conservative critic who writes for the New York Post and works at the Manhattan Institute, writes for the City Journal, she had this to say. Let's take a look. Banks's most important change regarding sanctions and eligibility is tonal. HRA employees hearing the message from their chief that rule enforcement harms clients will undoubtedly overcompensate by ignoring violations across the board. I don't want to go through the long list that was in your testimony of how you're going to sort of change things, but you really are taking a very different approach than the prior administration as far as checking in with people, sort of closing their case if they miss too many meetings or don't stay in touch with you.
Well, in the conversations that I've had with frontline staff throughout the city, it's very clear that the frontline staff came to this agency because they want to be in an environment in which they can help people. And whether it's four-year college, whether it's denying food stamps to people who are unemployed or underemployed without children, the staff sees the harm that's caused to people through some of these past counterproductive policies. I think the assumptions in her comment ignore the reality of what our staff do day in and day out, which is they see very desperate people who need help. And they apply rules that are set by the federal and state government. And all we're looking at is the extra things that the city did beyond that which the federal and state government required are the things that are counterproductive. And so we're looking to cut back on the things that are leading to the hearings in which we're winning 1 out of 10, that are leading to the 25% of the people who are leaving for jobs coming back, that are leading to the 1 out of 10 people applying for shelter. These aren't hallmarks of a program that's working. And the message to staff is we want a program that works for people, that uses the dollars that have been allocated to us wisely, and that has better results for people. We're an agency that's supposed to be fighting poverty and income inequality, not just moving people in and out of the rolls and having them come back and sending them to the homeless agency.
No, I mean, your predecessor, Robert Doar, told me once that one of the policies that was often cited, maybe by you, among others, fingerprinting food stamp recipients, that while it might seem harsh and while it might not even save that much money for the city, he said it was important to show the public, the taxpayers who are supporting all of this work, your or your $9 billion agency rather, to show people that the money is not being sort of thrown away, that it's not an ATM machine, that people, that accountability is going to be enforced. Did he have a point, or did he have that wrong?
I agree with the governor on this. The governor eliminated this requirement, and I think, frankly, that Commissioner Doar was wrong on that. There are a lot of things I respect about Commissioner Doar in terms of his emphasis on employment. I agree that a primary mission we have is trying to connect people to the workforce, giving them the wherewithal to be able to get a career and a pathway out of poverty, rather than simply being content with people with no way out of the circumstances in which they come to us under very desperate conditions, as I've said. So the issue about fingerprinting, that's not an issue that's relevant anymore. The state has made it clear that that's not what the policy is, so we don't do it.
Well, pick the other one, the Immigrant Sponsor Recovery Program, right? I mean, the prior administration, you know, somebody sponsors somebody, they come over here, things don't work out for that person, they end up on public assistance. The prior administration would go to the sponsor and say, look, you owe us for the money that we had to pay for this person that you sponsored to get over here. I know I'm simplifying it, but that's pretty much what happens, right? You testified that you're going to sort of end that practice.
We did end that practice. We were the only place in the entire country that took such a position. And in fact, the people, the sponsors who were being pursued by HRA were themselves only one step out of poverty. So to go after the sponsors was potentially to impoverish yet another family. So this was, again, a counterproductive policy that was raising $900,000. $900,000.
Have you had an aha moment where you say, look, 33 years at legal aid, and I've been hassling one administration after the next. Now that you're on the other side of the desk, has anything occurred to you that's like, oh, wow, maybe I can't do something that Attorney Steve Banks was always ordering HRA to do?
Well, you know what the great thing is, again, to be in this position, that you do have the authority to make a tremendous difference in thousands of lives of children and adults in the city, and to be the HRA commissioner and administration, in which the mayor has said that he's focused on ending poverty or fighting poverty and addressing income inequality, and to be the head of the agency that's charged with doing that each and every day. I've said before, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really make a difference for tens of thousands of New Yorkers who really literally need a helping hand.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear in our last minute, I mean, what I take from your testimony is that the caseloads are going to go up. That there are going to be more people who are on assistance. Not
necessarily. If we can address effectively the 25% who are coming back out of the failed employment programs of the prior administration, taking a more rational approach to case closings and sanctions so as that we don't cause people, we don't have a link between our policies and people ending up in the homeless shelter system. Doing that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll have more people on the caseload if we can implement the kinds of effective employment programs that we want to address the 25% return.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for coming by, and we wish you the best of luck and the best of success with one of the more tough jobs in city government.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. Still to come, will the Working Families Party say yes to Governor Cuomo? New York Times columnist Michael Powell has the answer. No, he doesn't. He's going to join us to game out this weekend's highly anticipated meeting. Also tonight, we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at the